The history of Mesmer the Impaler has long been hidden by Queen Marika herself. The first son of the Elden Ring's vessel wields a fire so potent he brought the land of Shadow to its knees at the behest of his mother. This man would wield his curse to do her bidding, and eventually be rewarded with exile. This is what we learned from the story trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, and now that we can enter the land of Shadow for ourselves, we can not only face Mesmer in battle, but we can uncover the story of his followers, his crusade, and his flame, while also learning the secrets of his origins and build a timeline of when exactly he was banished. I also have a suspicion that we can more or less confirm both sides of his parentage, thanks to the greater implications of the lore of this land. Today, we will explore Mesmer, the keeper of the land of Shadow, the ever-watchful eye keeping this place in check. Before we do though, we think it's important that you have your own watchful eye looking out for you. So let's talk about this week's sponsor, ExpressVPN. This week's episode of Elden Lore is sponsored by ExpressVPN, a privacy and protection tool that keeps you safe from hackers and data thieves, while also allowing you to access a wider reach of content than you ever have before. Personally, I use ExpressVPN to gain access to a number of shows that I would have to buy multiple streaming services in order to watch. My daughter recently discovered Minions, and thanks to ExpressVPN, I don't have to pay extra for access to all 3 Despicable Me movies. Can't find the movie or show you want on Netflix in the US? Use ExpressVPN to search what's available in other countries, and save yourself some money by not having to download yet another streaming service. You can even use ExpressVPN while gaming on PC. For example, in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, you can change to a foreign server location in multiplayer and zombie mode, in order to be matched with players across the globe. Take advantage of lower ping by being on the same server as friends in other countries, or play against easier competition because it's not peak gaming hours somewhere else. ExpressVPN is incredibly easy to use, and with the fastest speeds of any VPN around, 24/7 customer service, as well as their trusted server technology that makes it impossible for them to store your browsing data, they're definitely the best option on the market. Make sure you go to expressvpn.com/squaretable and find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN free as a thank you for clicking my link. Thanks again to ExpressVPN for supporting the channel. And with that said, let's talk about these new possible lore implications for the lands between. I believe the best place to start the story of Mesmer is at the very beginning, a place that holds one of the greatest mysteries of the character. Who was his father? In the past, I thought Mesmer's parentage would be a curveball, but after playing through the DLC, I've joined the ranks of the masses and believe that Mesmer was born to Marika and Radagon, well before Marika became a god. In this time, Marika and Radagon were 2 separate entities, not yet joined into one flesh. Thanks to Reddit user the-eldritch-creep, I believe we can confirm that Marika and Radagon were together before her marriage to Godfrey, and that calling Radagon back to be the second Elden Lord was not the first time they were wed. There's an item in the Shadow Keep known as the Secret Rite Scroll that explains how one ascends to godhood. A scroll made of white tree bark. Few can decipher the scroll, which describes the secret rite of the Divine Gateway, said to be found at the tower enshrouded by shadow. A lord will usher in a god's return, and the lord's soul will require a vessel. I long suspected that Radagon and Marika were not always one, and upon finding this scroll, I had first assumed it was only meant to explain our current situation in the DLC. But now it seems as though Radagon was the lord who ushered in Marika as a god, and Marika acted as a vessel for her lord's soul. This would make the 2 inseparable, as they shared a body and had their first children, Mesmer and Melina. The idea of Mesmer and Melina not only being native to the land of Shadow, but also related, could seem out of left field. But Mesmer's kindling confirms he did have a sibling. The kindling that burned inside Mesmer the Impaler, a dark thing eaten away at by a wicked serpent, burns the sealing tree said to be found at the old Rao ruins. Mesmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. If we consider both that Melina is the kindling maiden, and her words telling us that her mother resides within the Erdtree, it makes sense that she and Mesmer were the first of Marika's children, born with curses due to the nature of their parents' union. Mesmer with the base serpent festering within, and Melina, burnt and bodiless, possibly by Mesmer's hand. Mesmer would be the first of the demigods, and he would accompany his mother into the land she became a god of, the lands between. We know he followed her here due to the remembrance of Commander Gaius. Remembrance of Commander Gaius, hewn into the Skadu tree. Both were as elder brothers to the lion, and both were cursed from birth. In spite of, or perhaps because of this very reason, Gaius was both Mesmer's friend and the leader of his men. Since we know Gaius was the first student of the Alabaster Lord who taught both him and Radahn, this would mean the three of them interacted often, and that would not have been done in the Land of Shadow. Along with this confirmation, we also see Mesmer's handiwork on the mountaintop of giants, as many giants are seen impaled and brought to their knees, meaning Mesmer marched alongside Lord Godfrey. Lastly, we have the Impaler's Catacombs, an area that bears Mesmer's moniker, and is likely a tribute to him in some way. We can still see what little remains of how Mesmer left a mark on the lands between, but his true claim to fame is the raising of the Land of Shadow. This attack came at the order of Queen Marika as described by Mesmer's armor. Black armor of Messmer the Impaler, draped with a red cloak bearing his crest embroidered. On his mother's wishes, Mesmer made himself a symbol of fear, undertaking the cleansing crusade she desired. Direct thy maledictions, thine ire, and thy grief, towards me alone. Mesmer wanted those of the Land of Shadow to blame him for the fires he used to cleanse their land, not to blame his mother. But it seems, unbeknownst to Mesmer, Marika sent him away for her own reasons as well. His remembrance tells us, a malevolent snake writhed within Mesmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put in its place a seal of grace. Yet having done so, her fear compelled her to secret away her child within the realm of shadow, hidden away, keeping company with the original sin and a hatred that would not be confined. Yes, Marika wanted to subjugate the Land of Shadow, but by using Mesmer, she was also able to hide the history of his curse, which I believe to be tied to the origins of his birth, much like Marika's other cursed children, Melania and Mikola. Mesmer himself despised his fire and his snakes, as we can learn from the spell Mesmer's Orb and his helm. The incantation tells us Mesmer despised his own fire. Time and again he hoped to rid himself of it, but ever did it burn. And the helm tells us the winged snakes were Mesmer's constant companions. They were there when the base serpent was sealed away behind his eye. They were there through his eternity of suffering. They will accompany him yet, in his hideous new form, born when he destroyed the grace granted by his mother. They have accepted his fate as much as he. I believe the march against the giants was Mesmer's first attempt to undo his curse of flames. Perhaps by wiping out the giants, he hoped to make their god flee, which would release him. But after this failed, he saw the futility of trying to rid himself of his curse. So it was that Mesmer would lead his forces, which are worthy of their own video diving into their lore, and burn the Land of Shadow to the ground. Given that once we meet Mesmer, he is already missing an eye, I would assume he allowed himself to use the power of the base serpent to achieve his conquest. After this, he would take his place at the top of the Shadow Keep, in the darkest chamber, where he would protect the secrets of his mother, and keep the land sealed in shadow. That is until we arrive, ready to take his flame for ourselves. Upon meeting us, Mesmer has an intense distaste for our kind, the Tarnished.
Mongrel intruder. That tarnished, it seemeth. Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light? Yet, my purpose standeth unchanged. Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death. In the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Mesmer has a deep hatred for all those stripped of grace, though he seems to have none himself aside from the seal placed within his eye by his mother. It stands to reason that Mesmer was still in the Lands Between during Godfrey's exile, and the subsequent stripping of grace from all the Tarnished. Given his line about our potential ascension, it seems clear that Marika did not tell him her intention was always for us to grow strong and return to her golden lands. Without this understanding, he sees us as more of a usurper to the Golden Order, and fights us with everything he has. When pushed to his limit, we see his true strength.
I will not suffer. A lord devoid of light. No, Mother. Forgive me. Soon tarnished. Wilt thou be taken in the jaws of the abyssal serpent shorn of light?
We now face Mesmer at his strongest, the full might of his fire and serpents on display. The only way to claim his flame is to strike him down, and so we do, putting an end to the story of Mesmer the Impaler. Mesmer is yet another pitiable god, a child of an obscenely selfish woman who would use her children in order to further her own bid for power. He was nothing more than a pawn, and eventually a source of shame that needed to be hidden away, along with the entire land of Shadow, in order for Marika to claim her divinity to be legitimate. Mesmer has no frame of reference for the current state of the world thanks to his banishment. He's unaware of the Shattering, and never received a great rune. His name was scrubbed from the history of the Lands Between, even though he had such an integral role in establishing it. In the end, Mesmer and his flames of doom and destruction were confined and locked away from the eyes of those who would bask in honeyed rays of gold. Yet again, a cruel fate is bestowed on someone whose original sin was not of their own doing, but rather the union of Queen Marika and her consort, Radagon. Thank you for joining us for this look at the history of Mesmer the Impaler. Do you think we covered everything there is to know about this demigod? Do you believe Radagon was Mesmer's father, and that Marika acted as his vessel so she could attain godhood? How long do you think Mesmer stayed in the Lands Between before being sent off to scorch the Land of Shadows? is the younger sister mentioned in Mesmer's kindling, Melina? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.